questions?
Yeah, we'll open it up for questions now. I hope the session has given you guys a better understanding of the relevance of OpenFlow and SDN within the enterprise. It's not just a data center service provider technology, but there are also compelling use cases in the campus, and I expect we'll see more of these. The market will expand. And so if you guys have any questions now, we'll take those for either Matt or myself.
Hi, it's James from Adva. Just a question with this. You were describing about a bunch of sort of point solutions that were all very interesting, but do you see a common software platform that you can be working with?
Yeah, so I see the platform as fundamentally being that network virtualization platform. I think, to me, that's the base that you have to provide. This idea that my whole network essentially becomes one device to manage. I can then virtualize that, and then I want to program on top of that, right? So that network virtualization platform is the platform. What's that?
Sorry, that's what it should look like. Can you touch it? Does it exist? Can you point it at any group that's bringing that to be?
We are working with a number of different vendors, which I'm guessing you could guess who those are, about what this looks like. We have a 2-year time horizon when we're going to do a forklift upgrade of our entire infrastructure. So that's the sort of timeline that's driving our thinking. So that's where we want to figure out where we're going to be 2 years from now. So we've beta tested a lot of things. We have things in the lab, but we're not ready to do anything on a large scale.
I have a question here. So generally in the network, what happens is the firewall policies are assigned by security administrators, while the VLANs and other kind of rules are assigned by the network administrators. So in your implementation, like when you merge the two together, how does it play out? And specifically, like now some policies would be enforced by the radius policies, and some of them would come dynamically. So how does the mix work?
So what I see is you're going to have virtual networks, and you're going to group things into those, and we could have on order of hundreds of those. Would be my guess. So the first set of policy is which devices go into each of those virtual networks, and that's sort of made probably at a fairly high level. And then the policy is what traffic can go between the different virtual networks and from the internet into any one of those virtual networks, and that's what will likely be delegated to different departments in our case, which would have their own sort of security mechanism. That we have sort of high-level university-wide security policies. We wouldn't let them put a policy in place that allows anything to go through there without some sort of, it can't be a permit any unless they have some sort of approval for that. But beyond that, a lot of that gets delegated down to the individual departments because you just simply can't know all that policy centrally. So there's the aspect of what the virtual networks are and what devices go into each one, and then there's the policy of what traffic can go in and out, which is what gets delegated.
And just to add to that, it's interesting when you start looking at network management when you have a controller type environment or OpenFlow in it. You're still going to need some kind of overarching management platform that allows you to define what the policies are. Looking at that, and it's something we're looking at as well, is what level of definition is required? How do you still allow the programmability? Do you let applications do whatever they want on the network? The administrator is still going to have to define some high-level policies in order to ensure that you don't have rogue devices requesting resources that are not applicable for that type of device and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see where the whole network management platforms go in terms of managing these policies in the future.
From an operations perspective, what kind of skills are required to manage an OpenFlow environment along with the networking infrastructure?
I don't think that changes a great deal in terms of operating it. I think what changes is the skill sets in terms of actually extending the platform. And I didn't get into much talking about the platform, but I think the real change here in terms of skill sets that we're looking at is this idea that the network becomes a platform. And I don't think anyone is there yet today. There are a number of platforms emerging, but no one can build a one-size-fits-all solution. I mean, we see that all the time. There's a reason we still have our own NAC solution. We need a platform that we can build on because we have unique requirements. And I think that's true for a lot of different industries. So we need people that understand networks and can program. And that's something that I think is missing. There's not enough of those people. So we actually have an internship program to start training people because we see, 4 or 5 years down the road, we need more smart developers who also know networking.
Another thing to add to that, I was talking to some of our test engineers who've been working on OpenFlow, and they were involved in the ONF Plug Fest, which happened a few weeks ago. It was basically everyone got together, different engineers from different companies, to test interoperability. And one of the things that came out of that, one of the learnings he expressed to me was that right now, where the technology's at, there's some tools and troubleshooting tools that are still missing, and they're going to need to develop those in order to troubleshoot these type of networks. They were having trouble, having visibility into what the topology really looked like in terms of from the controller perspective. Right now, the only tool really they're using is traditional things like Wireshark and packet inspection. So I suspect that we'll see more integrated tools for troubleshooting SDN networks that provide more visibility into what's going on in the flows and what the topology looks like from the controller standpoint.
Just an observation. I'm Dan Schmidt from Clemson University. That an observation that piggybacks on what you just said, which is we're used to operating in an environment where we've got application programmers who think above layer 3 and network engineers that work below that. And what I see at Clemson is I've got network engineers who know how to run networks and they typically don't program. And I've got programmers who typically don't know networks and love to say, hey, just let the network guys worry about that. But my observation is that students who have never been exposed to that separation are usually kind of amazed to learn that the network is not today generally programmable. So SDN to them is a natural fit. And I think you'll see this if you involve students, especially in an SDN environment. It just works. We're dealing with, frankly, people like me, dinosaurs, who are used to operating in this divided, walled world. And that's where we're really going to see change.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Talgo with Center Networks. Just a simple question. You mentioned that there are thousands of network devices with OpenFlow enabled on your network. I just wonder how many of those are just pure OpenFlow switches and how many are hybrid switches?
So in terms of what we have deployed today, we have both. So our load balancing solution is just a native OpenFlow switch. We have 1,700 HP switches in our network that all have an OpenFlow firmware build for them today, and clearly those would all be hybrid switches. They don't have OpenFlow enabled today, but if we went that way, they would all be hybrid switches. I think hybrid's a great way to do a short-term rollout. In fact, this is what we've done on a number of our switches. Turn on a VLAN, turn on OpenFlow, put a controller on that VLAN, move a couple users over there. It's a great way to get started.
So if you're deploying hybrid switches, and you mentioned that one of the benefits of SDN is simplify centralized management. So with hybrid switches, you're actually adding another type of management interface on top of the original network management system. So in that case, you actually make it more complicated instead of making
it's clearly, in my opinion, an interim solution, right? We wanted to start playing with this and doing something. It was a great way to do that. You put some VLANs out there, you enable OpenFlow. It's a great incremental solution. I don't think, certainly I don't see that that's where we want to be 5 years down the road.
So there's a plan to actually make it simplify for the long run.
Yeah, and ultimately that comes back to needing a centralized management plane as well. And there's the OF config management protocol being developed, but there needs to be both management plane and control plane in the controller, and you can't get rid of the hybrid mode until you get to that point.
Thank you.
Question: when you enable the SDN into or OpenFlow into their network. Is there a specific process that you followed into the pod model, or how do you really provision it aside with the Is it side by side with the production, or is it hybrid environment that you have today?
Yeah, so initially it was a hybrid mode. So we took a few HP switches, we put OpenFlow image on them, provisioned some VLANs, turned on OpenFlow on those VLANs next to the other ones, and put some users on there and started playing with it. That was about 2.5 years ago. Since then, we've looked at specific use models. So I mentioned the load balancer model. We also have an Ethernet provisioning system that we've built. So sort of point solutions is what we've been looking for to get our feet wet with doing this, right? So we can see, I need a load balancer. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can build that. Let's go build it. And so, we've been doing that as sort of point solutions while we look at this longer term. How do we completely remake the network with OpenFlow?
So in a sense, it was a hybrid model in the beginning that we had the native control and then you had the OpenFlow.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
If there aren't any more questions, that'll wrap it up. Thank you.